I'm Trevor Bachnight at the Sumter County Museum, and I'm here with Mr. Charles Broadwell, who is the archivist and curator here at the museum. And we wanted to bring another artifact out of our collection today and talk about it. And this is a bowl that has a very special history. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Yeah, it does, Trevor, and a most unusual one for us. But to maybe give a little background, in 1791, George Washington decided to make a southern tour. He never had visited South Carolina, and he wanted to say he had visited all the 13 colonies. So he started his trip in Philadelphia. He came down the coast on the King's Highway, ended in Savannah, and then he came back north and through Camden. But just before he got to Camden, he came to William Sanders' Tavern, which we know today as Oakland Plantation. But at that time, it was primarily a tavern, and he stopped for lodging and food. He had some requirements because his company consisted of 18 men. Now, he himself, he traveled in a nice white carriage with 4 brown horses, and he carried 5 saddle horses, including his personal mount, Prescott, with him. So he couldn't stop just anywhere. He had to feed a group plus his animals.
Sure.
So Sanders was set up for it, and that's where he stopped. Now, while he was having his meal, this is a piece that was used to serve him. This is a platter, so it's somewhere over 200 years old. It came to the museum from Ms. Artie Graham, who was direct descendant of William Sanders. And she has protected it. He went through the Civil War. It was buried to hide it from the federal troops, and it's in remarkably good shape.
It really is. Almost looks new. Well, do we know what he ate?
No record of it. Just that he did stop there. That's well documented. But it was probably wild game such as venison, etc., and plenty of vegetables, I'm sure. And because Sanders was in the business of being a tavern, and that's had a little bit different connotation than it does today. A tavern was a respectable place where you stopped. And as a side note, Thomas Sumter tried to get George Washington to come to Statesboro, put that on his tour, but apparently that didn't suit him. It was out of his way or whatnot. Anyway, he ended up in Camden and declined Thomas Sumter's invitation.
I see. So Oakland Plantation is pretty closer to Camden than to Sumter.
Yeah.
What would have been Sumter, I guess?
Yeah.
It wasn't a town here at the time, was there?
No, it was just a trading post. But Sumter County, as we know it today, is basically, you can cut it in half. You take the southern half, and that was Richardson territory. You take the northern half, and that's Sanders territory.
Okay.
And those two families pretty much populated those two areas. And then they started marrying into each other's families, so almost everybody is kin to everybody.
Right. In the western end of the county, in that area.
Yeah.
The Sanders, I know, were one of the first families in this part of the state.
Yeah, absolutely. William Sanders was, yeah. He pushed on. He came through the Richardson territory and pushed on to what was Pine Tree Hill at the time, was Camden. And a lot of places, particularly streams, are named. He named them as he went along the way.
Okay.
But he settled, and the Sanders family stayed in the tavern, which obviously was remodeled a number of times, but they stayed there for probably 5 to 6 generations in the same place.
And it's still standing, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it open to the public at all?
No, it's not. It's a private residence, but it's in pristine condition. Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
Couldn't be any better.
Beautiful structure. So you said that George Washington came down on the King's Highway and then went back more or less the same way. Is that right? It's just sort of straight down and...
Well, he came inland on his way back north.
I see.
The King's Highway originally stopped at King Street in Charleston.
I see.
But by the time he took his tour, it had been extended to Savannah.
Did it go from Camden to Kingstree? Or was it a different road?
No, it's what we call today with Highway 17,
Oh, I see. So
running along the coast.
I was thinking 261 out in the, being the Kings Highway out
Yeah,
in the western part of the.
yeah, there were a lot of King's highways.
Okay.
You know, but this particular one ran down 17 right along the coast.
Probably a much more heavily traveled
Yeah,
road at the time.
yeah, and George Washington wanted particularly to visit Charleston, which it ran right through, as I said, to stop there at one time.
And so he spent the night in Sumter County and at the Sanders residence and then moved on. Did he ever say anything about that visit, or do we know
Not to
anything?
my knowledge, because at the time, and for him, it was just a stopover. He would take the trip, go so far in a day, as far as they could go, and then, stop and rest for the night.
I see. Well, talk a little bit about the piece itself. Do we know where it was made, or?
It was probably made on site at Oakland, because this area is blessed with clay. We have plenty of clay. There's no maker's mark on it that we've been able to detect so far. And it's a utilitarian piece of pottery. It's certainly not fancy by any stretch, which is probably good. It may not have survived this long had it been, fine china.
Right. It's a little on the heavy side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a good thing.
But no marks on it, no chips, no cracks. A little, one or two discolored spots, but basically there's no damage to it at all. It's as good as it was when George Washington ate on it.
It looks like it. Well, just from a technological perspective, this piece of pottery seems very well made and like it used a sort of a high degree of technology. I saw the little spots on the bottom where they stilted it to keep the glaze from sticking to the kiln, and the glaze is almost perfect. It looks like it's really well made.
It is well made, Trevor, and it could easily have come from England, because in addition to running the Tavern, William Sanders was a trader. So he would trade with the Native Americans, take whatever he traded goods down to Charleston and bring back trade goods. So this could easily have been something he brought back from Charleston, had been imported from Europe. I would, my best guess would be, if that was the case, it came from England, since that was where most of the trade was done. But it's a heavy piece. It's a utility piece, so it's not fine china, but it was made to serve in the tavern and to last a long, long time, which it obviously has done with the colors and the durability of the piece itself.
Right, it does look almost new. So tell us a little bit more about how it was found and how it came into the possession of the museum. You said it was buried during the Civil War. Was it buried for a long time, or?
Well, to answer your first question, it came to the museum through Mrs. R.D. Graham, who was direct descendant of William Sanders. And the house itself served as headquarters for General Edward E. Potter when he came through in Potter's raid. And just before he got there, the Sanders family hid what their valuables, what they could, they buried them. And then after the troops left, they recovered those. And this was one of the pieces that was buried and saved, because the troops, when they came through, were in the habit of taking a lot of things out of their houses that when they got a little ways down the road, it became too heavy, so they just got, trashed on the side of the road. So most of the people tried to hide some of their valuables, be it silver, be it china, or whatnot, and this was one of the pieces that they wanted to preserve. But Miss Graham, donated it to the museum many years ago, and to protect it, and we're glad to have it in our collection, because it's one of the few things we have from that time period.
Okay. A lot of places have this claim that George Washington stayed there, ate there.
Yeah.
There's so many stories like that all over the country, I guess, or all over the eastern half of the country. How many, did he make a lot of trips like that, or was this just like a sort of a one-time thing?
No, one trip. This was it. And he could, when he got back, he could claim that he had visited all 13 colonies, which was what he intended to do. But there's stories that he slept, there's so many houses along his route. He claimed he slept in. A lot of that, I think, had its beginnings when the tourists were coming south, and on 15, 301, etc. It was a nice come along to say you slept in the room where George Washington did for these tourist homes.
When people traveled that route more often than the interstates, did they make a bigger deal about the history of all the little towns along the way and things like that? Or?
Well, they had their favorite places to stay, but these highways, in the case of Sumter, 15 was Main Street, and it had a lot of north-south traffic. So they seemed to have their favorite places to stay, Sumter being one of them. And I think there were probably 15 to 20 tourist homes, not tourist courts, but tourist homes in Sumter, mostly along North Main Street.
And I think there's a couple over on Calhoun, right? They're designed a little differently.
There were 2 on Calhoun, and most of them were followed 15, and then Somerton was another stop that people preferred, but depending on how far they want to drive in a day.
Oh, this is sort of halfway between New York and Miami, I guess.
Yeah,
So that was the
it's a good stopping point.
good stopping point. Well, speaking of good stopping points, that's a pretty good one, and we'll look forward to what our next artifact.
Same here. We like sharing the information, and I look forward to sitting with you again soon.
All right, we'll do it.
All right.